Brendan Dover, Laurence Quinn, thanks for coming on the latest episode of Melbourne Calling. We wanted to talk about the Royal Commission that the government's just announced in April about this. It's a scandal, really, isn't it? I mean, you're getting 500 vets have topped themselves since 2001. That's about basically 2 a month. The rate of suicides in the Australian Army is higher than in the British Army by about 40%. It's a national scandal, and first up, just congratulations to you and everyone, all the vets who have been pushing really, really hard for this Royal Commission. Can we just start off just with a bit of a backstory about yourselves? Like, Laurence, how old were you when you decided to join the military? What was going through your head when you made that decision?
I was finished school, went to Swinburne Uni for a little bit.
So you're a Melbourne boy, yeah?
Melbourne boy, grew up in Melbourne. Grew up just in a city sort of area. Went down to Swinburne Uni, started there studying a fire technology course. Wanted to be a firefighter. Met quite a few sort of fireys or people who are.
It's really hard to get in the fireys.
I found that out. I'm not in there, so yeah, it is. And basically, they all said, "Mate, you got no chance. You're 18." So I said, "What's a good alternative to get that experience up?" And they said, "Go travel the world." Didn't have the money for that. Go get a good degree like medicine. Wasn't smart enough for that. Or join the military, and they'll give you all the skill sets we're looking for. So went down to DFR and joined the Australian Army.
A lot of people think that most people in the army are from like regional and rural Australia. Like, you're a city boy.
Yeah.
What percentage would you say of city kids from Sydney, Melbourne, Perth, whatever, were in the army? Were they mainly kids from the city or from
I'd
regional?
say so. Yeah, I came across quite a few.
Yeah.
It was never hard catching up with people when I came back on leave. There was always plenty of people around. So
probably is a little bit out of whack in regards to percentage. Probably the country probably still about 65%. I think would probably come from the country, but there's enough out there from the city blokes that definitely join up.
So Brendan, where were you brought up, and what made you decide to join the military?
I grew up in Geelong, so I've got a family history of military service. So I went to university, went to Deakin University, Bachelor of Commerce, and then I moved to Melbourne shortly after that. So I worked for Westpac and then a company called Malin Superannuation. So I was a bit of an older guy when I joined the army. I was 24 years of age. So I was a bit of a granddad. Most people who join the army, 18, 19, they're looking for a bit of purpose in life. But I had some years' experience behind me before I decided to go down that path. So at the age of 24, I was still relatively fit. Had a bit of a crossroads in the career. The company decided to sell out of Australia, and I just had a choice to stay in accounting or continue the family legacy. And unfortunately, there was no one else within our family, and my cousins decided not to go down that path. So as the oldest, I probably took a bit of responsibility to continue that family legacy, and then decided my time was up. And I think it also coincided with September 11 attacks as well. So in regards to working in a tower in Melbourne City, I was in 333 Collins Street, and then to see a plane crash into a building like that and decimate so many other people who were just going about their daily life. So, and then obviously the attack was not necessarily the attack, but the defence was centred around Afghanistan. So I think it was a good time to join the Defence Force. So one, there was a very good cause to do so, and also to carry the family legacy.
So there were those two reasons. And with you, was it the same, or was it just because of what you said before? I mean, was there a political motivation?
No, there was no political motivation. I think it was probably a familiar concept to me. I do have that family sort of history there. And
so you're the first in your family that's joined the military?
No, I've had, I've got all the major conflicts, sort of someone's represented. But yeah,
is that a thing that you get a lot of people joining the army that are from a military background, a military family, I should say?
Yeah, I'd probably say so. Yeah, I'd say it's a pretty high percentage. Would you?
I know in construction where I work, often you get like a rigger. Their parents, their dad will have been a rigger. Their brothers will have been in the same industry or are in the same industry. Is it the same? I never thought of that.
I think so. A lot of the biggest thing around it, I think, is when especially when your grandfather or other relatives, great uncles and stuff like that were talking about it. When you're talking to kids, you don't talk about the bad things that happen in war. You talk about the mates. You see them with other mates, and they're always smiling and laughing. So you see the better side of it through your family, and that's passed on to the children. So you always think when you join, it's going to be like that. But then, unfortunately, you see the other side of war and the Defence Force that people don't talk about very often. That will probably come across some of the conversations today.
Yeah, well, definitely. But just to start from the beginning. So you were 24. You go to boot camp. Was that harder for you than, say, an 18-year-old?
Yeah, I probably would be in regards to, by the time you're 24 and I was an accountant, I was a fully qualified accountant by that stage. So you're used to having money and freedom, and then all of a sudden you're in a room with 8 other blokes, you have your head shaved, you flush a moonie at the doctor, and then all of a sudden you're getting yelled at, 16
So is it like
hours
Full
a
Metal
day.
Jacket? Like, is it sort of...
It's not as bad, but obviously they're trying to instill discipline in you from day one. So it's very system orientated. So you go from one process to another to another. The hairdresser, go get your clothes, get your uniform, get your very process driven. So it's long days. You get off the bus and then you're there at 7 or 8 o'clock in the morning, and then you're working till 10 o'clock that night, and it's all go, 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 go. And then in the morning, 6 o'clock in the morning, you got people yelling at you, and it's an eye opener. So that side of it wasn't too bad of it. I think when you're a bit older, you take that into consideration. You know what's sort of coming. You sort of ask people. I had family that I could ask on what was their experiences like, and they laughed about the old asbestos buildings and stuff like that. And they were put through. So then I sort of knew it was coming. But in regards to you're not having your weekends, you're not having any interaction with your family and friends. That takes adjustment. So there's harder things in regards to the financial and freedom. That's harder. But when you're 18 and you need that little bit of a push and driven, it's probably a bit different to someone like myself.
What about you, Laurence? I mean, you said you went to Swinburne. Everyone I know from Swinburne is a total stoner. Like, you come from maybe a different background than you came from in Geelong, military background. You're at Swinburne, inner city university. The next minute you're in boot camp. That would have been a huge change. It
was a culture shock for me, I'd say. I was expecting it. Like, I'd spoken to older guys and got some good advice and stuff, but hearing it and doing it's two different things. So it was a culture shock for me. I think I had long hair and loved my phone like everyone my age at the time did. And,
how old were you when you joined?
I was 18.
Had you used a gun before? Like, had you been trained with that?
Not heaps, heaps, like here and there growing up, but it wasn't a familiar thing for me. No.
What was the hardest thing in terms of when you first joined?
Yeah, probably the shock of the pace of it, just the shock of the no downtime. That's what got me, and I think a lot of the things that you take for, I guess, as rights or whatnot, the ability to call your mates or to I don't know, whatever, they're taken away from you. So just adjusting to that. It's all for a reason. It's all for a purpose. So you've got that motivation behind you, but that doesn't mean it happens overnight. You still need to have that adjustment.
I think everyone is sort of shocked. Everyone's going to take it. Everyone's got different backgrounds. And then all of a sudden you're throwing 80 people in a platoon and train them up. So everyone's going to have different backgrounds and what they take. But I remember getting on the bus, leaving from Melbourne, just on Collins Street in the bus on the way there. And it was a young bloke there. He was only 19, but he already had the shaved head. He went and got himself prepared and did those sorts of things. But he'd seen Forrest Gump. So he packed 24 packets of toothbrushes thinking he was going to be on the toilet cleaning his toothbrush. And he goes, he didn't want to brush his teeth with dirty toilet paper. And I'm so sure it's not going to happen, mate, but we'll see how it goes. So everyone prepares different.
So when you get into boot camp and you do your basic training, how long is it before you're allowed out, like you had a weekend off and go back to see your family, your girlfriend, whatever it might be?
I think they give you a day trip after 55 days. So
it's a serious amount of time you're away from everybody.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, you get a day trip into Wagga, which is the local township. So you'd be dropped off by the bus at, say, 10, and then you're back on the bus at 4. And that gives you the chance to go buy supplies and refresh a bit, call your friends. But most people don't, because it's only 6 hours away, or 6 hours open, and you don't really tell your family and friends to come over during that period. You just go and just try and enjoy yourself, but no alcohol or anything like that. And then I think the weekend before the march out, they let you out for a Saturday or for a night and see how you behave, test you out a bit, check out your discipline, and then obviously you march out and away off you go after 80 days.
So when you finished your basic training, when you got out after your 55 days, did you feel very different to your rest of your mates that you had before you went in? Like, was there a different attitude? Did you feel, I mean, you must have felt like you'd been through a totally different experience than what they'd ever been through.
Yeah. I was probably just glad it was over.
Yeah.
Just a bit of relief.
Yeah.
Not so much that you think you're any superior to any of your other mates or anything like that different. So you just, more the fact you want to see them. It's been 3 months that you put away for isolation. A lot of time you've been catching up on footy sports or footy scores second hand or what your mates have been doing. So you're more interested in seeing them than feeling different.
Yeah, I think I felt pretty proud as well. You know, being part of the ADF, I felt like I'd achieved something. Like it's a really short space of time, so you get back and you feel like you've done all of this sort of stuff, and you have. You've got, you feel like you're part of something now, something bigger than yourself, and you go back and your mates have, it's 80 days later really, or however long, if it's a couple of months, 4 months or something, and you're like, what have you guys done? So I think I was a bit arrogant about it at first, yeah.
And you're still in a period of learning as well, so that's obviously your basic training, and then you're about to transition to the specific training for your course. So you're still in a very, you're still in a learning environment. So it's not like a university or anything like that. It's a unique learning experience, but you're still in a learning stage.
So Brendan, let me talk me through that. So you go through basic training, and then then later in the piece you've ended up in Afghanistan. So link those two together. So after your basic training, what did you specialise in?
Yeah, so I went to artillery. So we went back to
artillery.
Come back here to Puckapunyal. So that was a 6 weeks course, and then straight from there off to Darwin. So during that time, you pretty much get told where you're going in Australia. You're not quite sure where you're going to be, or where you're going to be living, or who you're going to be going with. So then all of a sudden you just get a bit of form that says, right, you're going, recruit over, you're going to this location. So, and then off you go. So and then from there, in my corps and artillery, you've got a transition period. So you start on the guns, you learn the aircraft at the guns. If you're successful with that and want to transition, then you go to the command post, and then you learn signals through that way. So I did that transition, and then I went to what's called the Hill. So that's where you learn to become a forward observer. So that's a good 2 years of courses coming back from Puckapunyal or Townsville.
So what does forward observer mean, just for those watching?
Yeah, so our job is to call in close air support, artillery fire, obviously mortar fire, and attack helicopters. So our job is obviously to provide support on the fire ground that is greater than that of a bullet. So obviously we call in danger close missions. Other times you go out and you'll be in the mountains or in any other observation point. You could be doing things like signals where you just literally call in, you're sitting for 3 days, there'll be only 4 years up in the mountains of Afghanistan, and you're just calling in observations. So that way you can see the enemy setting up any patterns. So when a later platoon comes through on the ground, they're ready for what's coming from you. You can say, all right, they're forming up at this location. If they're within range, you just literally put a bomb onto them and just decimate them. Other times you might be able to identify, which happens a lot, where the locals are avoiding a certain area. So straight away, there's a large IED in the ground. So you can radio through the forward line of own troops and say you're coming up to a known spot. I suspect there's an IED of a vehicle borne or a person one in this location. The engineers go back, put a detonator on once they find it, blow it up, and then the threat's gone. So you have a varying role in a war zone, but that's what the trust of what we do.
There must be a lot of trust, because if they mess that up, you could get popped. You're relying on the artillery to be absolutely exact with it.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, and that's why we do a lot of
missions very exposed.
On danger close. Exactly right.
Yeah.
And you need to be really drilled in the way you go about things, because remember, you're not just coordinating coordinates on a radio sitting out there just got time. You're copping bullets. So you're in the green zone with the infantry troops. Quite often, the only time you're ever calling in bombs is when you're getting attacked. So you have to identify the enemy. And in Afghanistan, where everyone wears similar clothes, well, the only time you're going to be able to identify them is when they're firing at you. So you're getting shot at, and you'll be able to call in exact coordinates, and then take into consideration of the blast of the bomb, so you can look after your own troops. And that makes doing what's fighting patrols backwards, and getting a position where you can pin down the enemy enough to actually call in the bombs. If you call in the bombs when you're still in that danger zone, you're going to get percussion, you can have internal bleeding, and you'll kill your own. So it's something that takes a couple of years to really be able to specialise and get used to.
So you're in Geelong, you join the army in Australia, you go to Afghanistan. There's a huge leap between all of that. The very first time somebody's trying to kill you, literally somebody's trying to kill you. What was going through your head?
Yeah, it's funny. You go through your drills. So the first time I got shot at was that was actually the first week we got there. Got a little bit lazy. So we're sitting in a complex which had they call it the Hilton feature. So it was a large koala complex. So they was checking for bombs in there, because obviously it's an entry point into where we're going to the green zone, from the desert to the green zone. So if the enemy is going to coordinate anything, it's probably more than likely out of that building. So they were going through, and as a forward observer, I really didn't have much to do. So I'm not an engineer. I'm not really doing any of the searches. So I'm sitting outside, and I was sitting out there for about 6 hours. The winter's starting to kick in, pretty cold, and then your arse goes a bit numb, and then you think, oh, there's a nice sunny spot over there, nice 20 metres away, I'll go get some sun. So you venture over there, you sit there and go, oh, this is good. And you sit down in Afghanistan, it's an untouched environment. There's no cars, there's no pollution. It's really peaceful. And then all of a sudden, boom, 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 right in front of you, just bang, bang, bang. Obviously the next bullet, the first bullet landed about 4 or 5 metres in front of me, and it was going across. So training will tell you straight away that's an AK-47, because when they're training, they put the gun pulls from left to high right, from low left to right. So he shot at me. And if it was a better shot, he would have took me out. That's the end of it. So you end up going through very quickly your army rules. You roll to the left, you yell out contact like an idiot, it's bullets flying. Of course, there's a fucking enemy there. And you end up doing a couple of moves, and then you just do things called Drake firing. So I didn't know where this guy was coming from. Obviously, the bullets are still coming, and then you're like, where the fuck is this guy coming from? You try and look for a scope, but then obviously you're still not, you're still in an adjustment zone. You're coming into a war zone. And then you have to do a thing called Drake firing, which fire on places you think you could actually be firing from. So pop, 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 pop. And then from there, it all stops. So, and then you get up and you get heart's raced a bit, and you go, right, off you go. There's your first one, and then you get up, you do the control again, and you continue on.
Is there any troops that you've seen or experienced that just like freak out, no matter how good their training is, that just like... Because once that happens, it's hard to know what to expect.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because everyone handles stress in a different way.
Yeah, well, in the same week. So I had a pretty eventful first week. So we're going through the local bazaar, and it's the time I shit myself. That's why I'm telling you this one for it. So going back through the local bazaar. Bazaar's the local market. So I'm at the arse end Arnold. There's no need for a forward observer at this stage. You're not going to call in bombs into local bazaar, because you'll just get mass casualties and kill civilians. So so I'm at the back there, just covering the rear of the platoon as they're going through. And then 3 Afghani National Armies, who the guys were training up, didn't want to go through the bazaar. They just freaked out. So they've bolted off. My section commander's got in the SBR and told me to go take after them. So I've sprinted off after these bricks, trying to yell them to get back into the fighting platoon so we can actually train them to go through the bazaar. When I've come back, that's taken about a minute and a half. When I've come back to the start of the market, the platoon, don't know why, they just decided to bloody desert me. They just kept on bloody walking. So I'm standing there, and all of a sudden you're 400 metres away from your own platoon. So I've looked up to the right, and there's a T intersection, a little bit of a cross intersection, and there's a vehicle coming straight at us, and everyone in the back of that vehicle's got an AK-47. There's about 15 of them, just standing in the back of the vehicles. I don't know if they're national police, don't know if they're National Army, and I don't know if they're Taliban. I'm not getting support from those guys, because they're 400 metres away, and there's no way knowing I'm taking my gun.
So you're on your own?
Yeah, well, I'm not fucking taking my hand off the gun, I can assure you. I'm not going to get on my SBR and say, hey, boys, look around, because in that time, they mates freak out with their hands moving, and then they take my life away. That's the end of it. So I stood out there with the hand facing the ground, just at any stage ready up and just to blast them. So you obviously across the Ozstar, you pull a little clip down the bottom that goes from semi-automatic to automatic. So that way, if these guys fire at me, they're going to take my life. There's no doubt about it. There's too many of them, but I'm going to take as many of those out as I can. So luckily for me, they've come forward at a very slow pace, and I'll tell you now, my ass is doing this 50 cent, 5 cent. And you're panicking. And it wasn't, I don't know if I froze, but one thing I didn't do is I didn't fire, I didn't move, and all I did is move eye contact and just watch them as they went past. And as the vehicle went past, I slowly moved with the vehicle.
Were they watching you?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I'm an Australian soldier, so if they were Taliban, at the end of the day, there's 15 of them that got away and they didn't engage, but if I hadn't engaged, I was dead. So that's just an example of some of the situations you can get in. Different people are going to take that in different ways. Some people are going to be really affected by it. It's going to really check their anxiety levels out and see if they can really continue on fighting the next day. It'll test you.
Laurence, just talk us through your story from military training to what you did in Afghanistan and what unit you were in, and what was your role there?
Yeah, so Kapoka, basic training, like David was saying, and then from there I was in the infantry, so I went to School of Infantry, Singo, which is in Singleton, New South Wales. I think that's about a 13, 14 week course where you train to be an infantry soldier. So I guess everyone sort of gets that foundational skill set of how to patrol and all that at Kapoka, but really, really basic, and they just build on that to be an infantry soldier. From there, got posted to 7RAR, which was in Adelaide. And similar sort of thing, start off in a rifle company, spend your time in a rifle company, work in a section, then once you've spent a bit of time in a rifle company, you get and sort of courses become available to you. Once you, I think it's private proficient, you need to hit that sort of thing, private proficient. You hit that, and then all these other courses open up for you. We were a mechanised battalion, so you sort of had your mechanised stream where you could go down and learn how to drive and crew command M113 AS4, or you had your support company route, which was where you do your recon snipers, your DEF SW, your mortar course, and your signals course, or your signals course. Sorry, they're all individual platoons and skill sets. And I went down and did SCCC, which is like a radio course. Learned all about how to use a radio in an infantry platoon and an infantry environment. And it's very different to what, there's different in some spots, like not calling in stuff or anything like that. But it's basically providing that battlefield commentary for hire, for your command post, so that they've got a good picture of what's happening in the battle space, so that they can start working on their end. If they've got anything happening on the ground, then they can start getting, medevac, or they can get the QRF, or they can start arranging other assets and other call signs to move about. And then also downwards, I'm relaying what they're saying to my platoon commander, who is then, controlling his area. So I did that. Went over to Afghanistan, started off working in CP, and then went over to a platoon and was a platoon signaller for what was called a OGA, other government agency platoon, for a provincial reconstruction team, a PRT, which was an American-led basically group that had a whole range of specialists in it, from like AusAid, DFAT, Department of Agriculture, Department of Economy, and like proper engineers and all this sort of stuff. And what they would be doing is they'd be going all around Uruzgan province and advising the Afghan people, the Afghan government, on how to do things. So basically any government role, or any role really that you see in a council environment in Melbourne, there was someone in a PRT almost who was doing that and advising that. So I was part of the force protection for that.
So you're like their security?
Correct, yeah. So they'd go, we need to go have a chat to this dude. So we'd move with them, make sure they were protected, make sure that they weren't, make sure that they had some form of protection basically. And I was a platoon sig for that. So it was probably a really interesting role in the sense that I got to see firsthand a lot of the benefits of what we were doing in Afghanistan. We hear a lot about all the really sort of, the bad stuff, or the fighting side of the house. But we don't really hear about the other stuff. The fact that we're able to help them build schools and open hospitals and put in infrastructure within Tarin Kowt and within Uruzgan that actually had a dramatic and marked improvement to their lives. We're talking about real stuff like women being able to read and write. Stuff like that. That's what Australian presence in Uruzgan achieved. It's not something that's focused on, but I think it's something that Australia should be immensely proud of, because we gave that nation hope to an extent. Then,
do you think that it's different with the American intervention? I just read an article a couple of weeks ago by Zach Kaplan and Margot Bow about the sort of corruption in the Afghanistan government and some of the special services, some American special services, working together to set up dodgy sort of mining companies, artisan mining, and they're all making a quid out of it. Not your rank and file troops, but some of the senior people, and it just seemed like a total cartel, at the expense of the. But what you're saying, your experience is different than that.
Oh well, we've got ICAC. Is it ICAC, the anti-corruption in Australia? We've got that for a reason as well. Where you've got money, where you've got assets, where you've got things on the ground, you're going to have. Someone's going to make money out of it. So it's horrendous. But all I can speak about, I can't speak about strategy, high level. I can't speak about any of that. But I can speak about the 8-month period I was there and what I saw. And from what I saw was there horrendous things? Yeah, there was. Was there Was there corruption? Was there, people playing the system and trying to get stuff, done for themselves rather than others? Of course there were, but there was also the opposite of that. There was a lot of people there trying to make it a better country, and yeah. I didn't have any illegal mining deals though.
You got nothing on this side. Cool. Fair enough.
Could have been the
Brendan, I can't think of anywhere more different than Geelong and Afghanistan. I mean, when you look at a photograph of Afghanistan, I've never been there, it looks like a lunar landscape. It's obviously a Muslim country. Yeah. It's a third world country. It's had wars going back, God, since the British first went in there, and then the Russians and obviously in the last 20 or 30 years. I mean, when you rocked up there, I mean, what were your, of the place itself, I don't mean the war so much here, but just it must have been like you're in a different planet.
Yeah,
right? It must have seemed like that.
Yeah, I think the only difference between Afghanistan and Geelong is there's a couple of suburbs that both need a bombing. But, despite that, when you obviously go into a place like that, then you really don't know what you're getting into. Yeah, you can talk about war all you like, but until you're there, it's a completely different experience. So when you stand up there, and we were always in the Chura Valley. In the start of the Chura Valley is the Baluchi Pass. So it's famous. The French Foreign Legion went there, got killed. The only person that's ever really made it successful through the Chura Pass was Genghis. And then all of a sudden you're 20 kilometres for it, and you look down the pass that probably 200 to 250,000 men have died over history of battles. Yeah, he couldn't make it through there. So you go through those battles and you realise you're 20 kilometres from it. These people are fighting. So I'll cut that bit out, but they are strengthened fighters. They've been fighting for a long time. Yeah. And the landscape has changed. If you look for a little bit of history and you go through Afghanistan, what it was 200 years ago, they were Persians. Now, they're not Persians, they're Mongolians. They're 5'2", they're small, they look like Genghis. So, and that's he's changed the whole landscape of that country. So it's changed dramatically. And then you find old remnants of war left, right and centre. And I remember one of the day we called it Happy Bomb Day. We were sitting in a little complex area and the engineer picked up a large area just scanning. We all walked over it and it was a massive hit and he started digging and we got down there and there was something like 43 RPGs that were supplies and they were anti-armour that was supplied by the US to the Mujahideen to fight against the Russians. So you go through and you realise you're in an area where everyone there, one, doesn't care if they live or die because they're used to it, and two, they're seasoned fighters. So it puts you on your toes, that's for sure.
It's quite ironic that the Mujahideen and some of the people you're fighting against were originally the good guys. When the Russians were there, like Reagan and that, they said, "Oh, these are the good guys. These are freedom fighters." And it was like a bit of a monster that they created that sort of seems to have got out of their control a bit.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah, and you see old villages that used to be in existence that the Russians went through and decimated. And
still see the BDMs on the side of the road, all sort of.
Did you guys ever meet a Taliban, like in terms of interrogation or a prisoner of war? Or I mean, what motivates? I put it differently. I'm from Ireland. There was a war in the north of Ireland. It's nothing compared to what happened in Afghanistan. But the British Army would be very isolated from the community for their own personal safety. When they weren't working, they would stay in their barracks. They wouldn't really meet locals that much. The locals wouldn't want to meet with them unless they were shooting them or throwing something at them. And I just wonder how much chance you had to meet Afghanis and also Taliban.
Yeah, we saw the Afghanis. We were on mentoring task force too, so we were training with them. We slept with them, we trained them. So we had heaps of conversation with them, and some of them are picking up English and those sort of skill sets. There's others that are interpreters that are quite well conversed in English. So obviously in regards to what motivates them, let's be honest, the most easy human emotion to teach is hate. They literally hate you, and if the second one is fear. So they hate you. They really do hate coalition forces, and they inflict fear onto their local community. If someone comes up and they've got information that'll assist us, the person is a target. They put themselves, lives, their families at the risk to tell us information. So you've got fear, hatred, and it's a nasty cocktail. And the only way to get any advantage in that environment is for mass killings. That's what shocks them. At the end of the day, you can talk about whatever you like. You can have whatever you like in Australian media and internet pamphlets. The only thing that really speaks up there is you put a bomb on and blow up 11 of them.
What was your experience? I mean, in terms of mixing with locals, and did you ever meet anyone who was a fighter for the Taliban?
Yeah, we came across.
Would you agree with Brendan in terms of the motivation of those people? Or?
Yeah, I think they're. Yeah, I think I would agree with that 100%. I think they're thugs. Yeah. Yeah. There's. I don't know how to describe it. I'm not as articulate as you, mate.
The Taliban, they have the guns, they've got the power, and they've got no fear.
And there's no like we like the prisoners that you like. They'd be there for no time, released very quickly with bribes or whatnot, back on the streets.
Yeah.
Like it's sort of.
Becomes frustrating. You capture a bloke, you interrogate him, you send him off as a park for helicopters, you think they're going to get some justice. You'll see him back in the field 2 days later, and you'll be like, geez, we just pick up a gun so I can take your life. It's the only way we're going to get justice here.
Do you think if Australia was, say the Chinese, there was a war in East Asia, God forbid, and China invaded and took over Australia, or Indonesia did, or whatever country did, I mean, do you think that you guys would join an Australian Taliban? Maybe not with the same politics, obviously, because you're not, you look at the world differently. But do you know what I'm saying? Like in Ireland, where I came from, in the north of Ireland, the English controlled the north of Ireland, and a lot of kids my age back in the day, not me personally, but got involved in the paramilitary organisations because, in their view, part of their country was taken over by a bigger country. I'm not doubting anything that you're saying about the Taliban and your, but I'm just wondering what you would do in that situation. Did you have any sort of because they didn't like the Russians being there, they don't like the Yanks being there, they don't like you guys being there, and no one's trying to justify their attitude towards women or anything like that because, I mean, 3 weeks ago they blew up a school in Kabul, 50 girls were murdered. But I'm just more talking about from their perspective. Generally, they're looking at it from you guys are foreigners in their country, or is that unfair?
No, I think the difference is education. What his team was a part of was educating them, wasn't it? So you've got 20% of the population really that controls it. The other 80% don't hate us. I've got an interpreter here, and we've got another bloke that works for us who's an engineer. He's from Afghanistan. He tells a completely different story. When US troops go in there, it wasn't as the media portrays it, as in people throwing grenades and getting angry in the streets. They were celebrating because there was a chance they're going to be liberated from this controlling entity which had no problems killing people to get their political point across. We don't have the Liberal Labor Party here out there killing each other. We've got a day which we go out there and we have our say. They don't have that. So for a lot of Afghanis, 80% of them want coalition forces. They'll assist. They need assistance in that country. Unfortunately, they can't control the demon that's within their country, and it's for their financial detriment, it's their education, it's their future. There's so many things that are just affected by that one group that just renders that country hopeless. We're not going for a holiday there. I don't know what my pop would have swore at when he went to Vietnam, whether he would have went for a holiday 40 years, but I've been to Vietnam on a holiday. You have to go there. It's a safe country. It does have communist politics, but in regards to a holiday destination, you can go there and have a good time. I don't think you're going to do the same in Afghanistan for 40 years.
How do you feel? I mean, last year President Trump started peace talks with the Taliban. This year, President Biden is saying that on September 11, the last US troops will be out of Afghanistan, and Scott Morrison saying the same thing with Australian troops. Do you feel, I mean, it seems like in Vietnam, when the Americans pulled out in 73, 2 years later, the North had taken over the South, like that was the end of it, sort of thing. Gotcha. Do you think that that's what's going to happen in Afghanistan when foreign troops come out, that the Taliban will take over? And if that's the case, does that make you feel? How does that make you feel? I mean, you've spent, the cream of your youth in Afghanistan, or and now the Taliban could well potentially be running the show.
Well, I think I don't know. Let's put it. Just say it we all agree apartheid in South Africa was horrendous, and white minority rule was horrendous. Like, we're essentially talking about minority rule by the Taliban. If everyone turned around and said we're happy with apartheid, we fought you guys, but you guys are holding on. Not many people would be happy with that. I don't think in Australia would be like, hold on a minute, they're doing bad stuff. What's going on here? But for some reason we've got a different view with the Taliban. We're happy to go. Yeah, cool. We've spent a lot of lives there and a lot of money there. and a lot of time there, and that's cool.
Yeah, I just, what do you think? I mean, do you know what I'm saying?
You always hope it doesn't happen, but there's nothing you can really do it. Once the troops are out, they're out. And you really left that country in the state that it is. So my job in regards to, obviously outside of being a forward observer, was to train those guys up, get them ready, get the civilians up to a stage where they can fight these guys. And you always hope that in the back of your mind that you did a good job and those guys are going to be able to protect their villages from the wrath that's going to come.
Do you think that the Afghani army, without, the Australian and American troops and others, is going to be able to stand up to the Taliban on their own?
Oh, you can just hope. So obviously I got blown up there in 2011. That's when I left the country. We were there for another 7 years after that. And unfortunately, I don't know too many other people that went over there to see get any feedback of how well capacity there is. But when I was there, their capacity of a 10-year-old child, really. Their army drills avoided. They really don't want to be in the country. They're more happy to receive the money and send it back to their families, but with the intent of potentially getting out of their country. Their biggest dream is to get out. So it's hard to fight someone who wants to be there and is going to risk their lives for their purpose, go to someone else who doesn't want to be there. So it's a big mentality step up, and all you can do is pray.
So how would you describe the differences between Australian troops and American troops? Do they have different motivations? Is their equipment better than ours?
No, of course. Their funding is a lot better. In regards to mentality, it changes from section to section. So you got those who are really level-headed. You got others that have 18, 19-year-old kids, and all of a sudden they're in Afghanistan, that they're going to be a bit gung-ho. In regards to assets, being from a forward observer, there was a massive difference. So we were in a transition period when the Dutch were getting out of there, and I hated dealing with the Dutch. They'd come back there, you'd call a lineup, which is whatever assets or whatever.
So the Australians were with the Dutch in the same area?
Yeah, that's correct. So the Dutch were in there, and they'd have the helicopters in there. So, and you'd call in, and the attack helicopters be in the area or a close air support, and you call in a lineup, which talks about the ammunition, how much fuel they've got, how much time on target it's going to take to get there, how long you've got the asset for. And when you're dealing with the Dutch, they'll be half loaded, and no motivation. And they'll just give you 2 or 3 liners back, and you just realise, these guys don't want to be up there. They're just flying around for a little bit of fun. They're out of here in 2 months. And then the Americans take over, and the first lineup you get is, we're loaded today. We're fully ready to rock. And you just go there, bang, 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 bang. We got 20 mate. We're going to fuck shit up today. And your head, in regards to confidence, really grows. And you're happy they're there. You really hope that you've got that asset behind you, because at the end of the day, if you're getting shot at and you're losing a battle, you can talk about their mentality that's always been a bit gung-ho, but I can tell you, when you're actually getting shot at, you want that, you need that, and it gives you a lot more confidence in your skill sets and being able to provide what you do as a forward observer to your team to protect Australians' lives when you've got that asset behind you. So for me, I was very happy they were there, and they loved working with the Aussies. I think the biggest thing you actually see, we always talk about the reputation that those who have fought before us in the Australian forces through Gallipoli and all other battles throughout, what reputation that is in the world scale, but you actually see it when you're in Afghanistan. And the Americans loved working with us. They know that Australians are well trained, we're smart, we won't go into a suicide mission, we'll call in the right assets, we'll do the right thing, we won't just go and blow shit up for the purpose of it. We're meticulous in the way we go about war zones. So they enjoy working with us, and it's a great relationship.
So Laurence, you were doing personal security. Did you meet other coalition forces?
Yeah, we had a lot. PRC was American-led, so it was sort of like 2 Australian call signs and 2 American.
And what was your experience with?
Yeah, so I really liked the Americans. Good banter. Yeah, good. I guess a different.
Did you meet with the Dutch much?
No, they were gone by the time I got there. Yeah, they were gone. I think. I can't even remember seeing 1 or 2 of them. I think they were completely gone. I think. And then there was. Yeah, I really liked working with the Americans. They really like it. I guess, how do you put it? It's like you're professionals, right? Like we're not a conscript army. We're all professionals. We all want to be there. We're all volunteers, and they're similar. Our motivations for joining might be different, or our motivations for being there might be different. But at the end of the day, you're getting like professional dudes in a room, and they're talking, you're working each other, and the banter comes out, and it's sort of like, what's the difference? We're all wearing multicam. I had an A&F and they had an American flag. They had, I think, M4s and I had a Steyr. Like, it was, yeah.
That was the only difference, really.
Yeah, like there was cultural differences and stuff, but...
Well, they're talking, attitude, that's about it, but it's a confidence thing. You're in a war zone. Sometimes confidence isn't a bad thing to have.
Yeah, 100%.
So you were there for 8 months.
Yeah.
And how long were you there before you had your accident?
So just over 3.5 months before I got blown up.
Can you talk us through your accident, what happened?
Yeah. So we were on a base called Cop Marshall. So 12th of December, just before the winter kicks in.
What year?
Obviously in 2010. So when the winter kicks in Afghanistan, it snows. A lot of people don't realise that. It's a country that goes from 50 degrees heat during the summer to minus 15. It's vast. The mountains are bigger than many mountains we have in Australia, and it gets pretty cold there. So the Taliban don't like to fight either during the winter. It's cold. They don't have good equipment. They don't have snow gear, so they don't like to fight. So they called the 2 or 3 weeks before winter kicks in the fighting season, or one of the fighting season. Ramadan's the other big one. So we got some intel coming in that the Taliban have obtained a mortar bait place. So what they are is they fire off Chinese rockets, little 62mm rockets, and when it's on a mortar bait place and it's bedded in, they're highly accurate. So what can happen if the snow's coming in, they fire at the base, and then the choppers can't get up because the snow's coming down, then all of a sudden everyone on that base is going to die a pretty horrible fucking death. So the Australian public doesn't want to hear that, especially coming up to Christmas. So that's the last thing the Australian politicians want, and no soldiers want either. So we went out, we got the base plate on the first day. From there, the direction came down from headquarters that they wanted to go back through the rest of the valley and clear out every single building to take those Chinese rockets. Because what you can do is, if you're highly skilled, you can put them on rocks, and with enough heat, they will fire off. Hugely inaccurate, 99% chance it's going to be a dud. But there's always that 1% chance they could get lucky and get a shot on the base. So we went out there and started clearing it. Unfortunately, what we did is, whenever we go, our training is in a platoon level training, is that you don't set patterns. In other words, you go out one day, you don't go there the next day, because if you do that 3 times in a row, I guarantee you they're going to fucking booby trap you. They're going to ambush you, they're going to know exactly what you're doing. So fortunately for us, we got told to go through the valley, so we followed orders we don't usually do. So, but we went out there, started clearing, building. So fortunately we got to a point, I think it was the 6th day in, it was the 19th of December. A bloke went pretty quickly back into a koala complex. We were on a foot patrol, and I was over a section next to a cliff. So as a forward observer, that's where I want to be. So if there's anyone forming out over the Rud, which is the river, or any of those buildings, I can see them and I can call in attack helicopters before they come to us. So that was the best place for me. Unfortunately, we were going over a crossing, and we crossed that crossing just before the on the right-hand side of the building. I've gone in to the right, a couple of blokes gone left, and I've stayed on what's called a pressure plate. So in the process of running, my left leg's taken off a pressure plate. So what they've done is, quite often when it's summer, we'll go through, and whenever you put in a 20-litre drum where you've got ammunitions and shrapnel, that sort of thing, you put them in the ground, you put a pressure plate about 1 metre in front of it, then it's freshed up, and you can see it the next day. If you go into any suburb, you dig a hole, the next day you go in there, the soil's different colour. So we find these things all the time. But in winter, when the snow's kicking in and it's mud everywhere, you can lay it, come back over there, big snow comes in, big rain comes in, everything's bloody mud. So unfortunately for me, they've just placed IED, but luckily for me, they placed it because I was in a rush. They obviously knew it was coming. They put the pressure plate right on top of the actual charge. So what happened is when I've stepped on the bomb, it's flown me straight in the air. So it's blew my leg off and did a massive to my left arm, but it didn't kill me, because if the pressure plate's in front, or the charge, is a metre in front, what happens when you stand on it? It's directional. It goes 45 degrees, and all the shrapnel will just go through your guts, through your face, through your neck. You're dead. That's the end of you. So for me, I've survived, but it cost me my left leg and the way of life.
Were you unconscious straight away?
Nah, I just felt like you were going really fast down a bike.
So what was the pain like? I mean, or were you just shock kicked in and you didn't feel anything?
Yeah, probably only about 5 or 6 seconds, I reckon, that you went in there. So the first time that I was standing there, and obviously your ears are what's ringing the most. It's like screaming.
Did you know straight away what had happened?
No, not to me.
Yeah.
So basically, like I said, I've landed, and I'm sitting on my ass. Well, my gun's there, so I picked up my gun by right hand, not much has gone wrong. So I've gone to stand up, and I just yelled, "Who the fuck hit that?" And then from there, all of a sudden, boom, I flooded in. What the fuck are you doing? And I just thought, oh shit, maybe I'm a bit dizzy. Went to stand up again, fallen over, and this time I've fallen over. I'm just going backwards a bit. My left hand touched the ground, then my left arm's on a 45-degree angle, the bone's sticking out, and then I put down there and my foot's not there. And then I just realised, fuck, that was me. So then from there, you fucking, fuck, someone help us out here, we need fucking air evacuation, I need out. And then from there, the blokes come over.
So you were able to communicate even though you were in that?
Yeah, so the obviously blew the radio off, and that's my job, I was the bloke that called in the air evacuation. So all of a sudden, someone else had to stand up and do that responsibility of ensuring the area was safe, calling in air evacuation, and then throwing up smoke. But unfortunately, it was just one of those days where you always try and win each day in a battle zone, but it didn't happen that day. So we got ambushed on the battlefield, and the local Taliban, because they didn't have an imprint on the ground further north, they blew up the local bazaar. So we had suicide vests killing up people in the market, and then we were getting blown up ourselves. So when the chopper came to me, it was almost relief. It was like, because basically the hardest thing about it, the most painful thing about it, is your whole left-hand side of your body is opened. So it's quite deep wounds that you can see your nerves and quite well.
Was your leg gone at that stage? Or?
Yeah, the foot's gone. Yeah, the foot's gone, and then
did they give you morphine?
Absolutely. Yeah, 3 hits it, thank Christ. Yeah, you beauty. It's good stuff.
But before the helicopter came.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and then because the wind's up. It's -5, -6 degrees, and all of a sudden the wind's up, and then the cold wind is going straight into your flesh wounds. It stings. It's not something you don't want to wish on your enemies. But then when the chopper comes, you think, oh, thank fuck. And you think, all right, 15 minutes time, I'm going to be out. They're going to knock me out. They're going to sedate me. They're going to fix me up. And I didn't think I was that bad. I obviously knew the foot was, right open. There was most of it gone, but for some reason you don't really compute that. You look at it and go, you can see a little bit of foot.
It'll get sewn up.
So you think, they're going to be able to sew that up and fix it up again, or they're going to be able to put some steel rods to replace your bones, that sort of stuff. So you're not thinking that you're dead. And then all of a sudden the chopper goes to my previous base, and it was coming down. I think, oh fuck, that was really good. That was nice and quick. The chopper's at the hospital already, and it drops at the base, and I had just enough strength. I put my head up, had a look there, and then they threw these 2 kids in with us. So they're from obviously the local bazaar that just got blown up. I realised, fuck, that's my old base. And I think, oh no. And hopefully there's no more stops. And then you get back, it lasts about 10 minutes, you get back to the hospital. They open up during the time of it, we obviously the American pilot and the American medic at the back of it, he's frantic at the first 2 or 3 minutes. He's obviously plugging the Elvis, trying to get some hydraulics into us, working out where the tourniquets need to be, looks at it, and then about 3 minutes in, he just grabbed everything out and he just threw it on the ground. So he gave up and presumed we're all going to die. We go open there, the chopper, they open up the door, they look in there, and there's 2 kids and there's me. They always talk about the United Nations treaty that no one's treated any different in a war zone. I can assure you, when you're dying, even if there's kids next to you, you just hope you're the one that they pick up and you're going to survive. So the medics opened up the door, they looked at all 3 of us, they just said the kids are gone, there's nothing you could do about it, and this one's half a chance, let's get him out and give him a crack. I was like, fucking half a chance, what are you on about? I'm right. Just sew the foot up and we'll be right. I'll be back out here in a couple of weeks.
Oh, you were the one with half a chance?
Yeah,
right.
So they dragged me out there, and then it wasn't until they drag you in, obviously you go into a hospital, it's quite cold, and then everyone's panicking, everyone's running, people running everywhere, getting ready for surgery, that the nurse comes up and she's got a phone. And she goes, oh, you really need to call home and tell your family you love them. I said, I'm fucking calling home. I'm not going to tell people that I'm blown up. I'll be right after this. Just fix me up, and then I'll call me 5 or 6 times when I'm fine. And then she put the phone down, and then she picks some checkboard up and asks you if you're an organ donor. And then it's when you realise, fuck me, I'm in trouble here. So they obviously put me in, all the cords go on you. It's got a tourniquet on the leg, tourniquet on the arm. And then obviously what they want to do is obviously knock you out. So they put the gas on you. But they release the tourniquets to try and identify where the blood's coming from, what they need to do. It's a really quick process. The problem is then is that they released all the blood. So I didn't have enough pressure to process the blood from my heart to the rest of my body. So the gas didn't knock me out. So I was just sitting there all calm, just going, fuck, take this pain away, take this pain away. And then all of a sudden the doctor starts talking about chopping my fucking arm off.
Did he know that you could hear all that? They thought you were knocked out?
I popped right up, and I threatened to kill him. I threatened to kill everyone in the room. So he touched my arm. I'll come back there, I've still got one good arm, I will take your fucking life and I'll kill every one of you fucking in here. And then all of a sudden, bang, they put these tablets in you, that's in just coma. Yeah, that's the end of that one. See you later, wake up 7 days later.
So you were when you woke up 7 days later, you were in Kabul, you were in...
Yeah, still in Kabul, so I was on the flight. So, yeah, you got no idea what's going on. You're out, it's dark.
And you're drugged
in a
to
lot
the
of
max.
pain.
Yeah,
Even though it's, you're still in, you stabilise just to get yourself to Germany. And then from there, obviously what happens, you go in surgery straight away when you get in there, so they can't give you water. So you get that much morphine pumped in your system to keep your pain down. I had blisters just welding up in your mouth and just bursting. So every 2 minutes just had these water belts and just massive pain. Just bang, 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 all these welts, and it just went for, it felt like days. It was fucking horrendous. And then you get to the end and they finally the plane opens up and I'm just screaming, get me the fuck off this thing, get off this plane. And then everyone, all the nurse that getting off, and I was, what the fuck, he's going, where he's going, get me out of here. And then everything went quiet, and then unfortunately the next person that came in the plane was the priest. And then it shut me up, and he got onto his knee, and there's 2 Americans that died on that flight. And then I just realised, well, I'm alive, they'll get me out. Fucking, and you just, and then
this was on the flight to Germany?
Yeah, that's correct, when you get to Germany. And then, all I wanted was water just to stop the pain of all the welts bursting in my mouth. But that was it, and they quickly got me out of there. Under sedation.
How long were you in hospital in Germany for?
I was there on Christmas Day. I remember that a lot. We had General Casey, who's a 4-star general from the US. Him and his wife travelled all the way from the US to be with injured soldiers in Germany, and that's how they spent their Christmas. Was good. So I tried to stand up and salute him and say thank you for his wife, and he ended up giving me what's called a calling card. Those calls that the Americans stand on each other, and the person with the higher card gets a drink off the other person. So I got a 4-star general card for that. So it was good that you get that nice touch from the US. Unfortunately, there wasn't too many people from Australian Defence Force there doing the same thing. But
why was
things
that?
Like that just don't have that level of patriotism, obviously. So it's just something that they really love. It's part of their culture and their life that Defence Force is. And I think they've probably got people within our chain of command that consider it a job rather than life passion. So there was no one there. And then back to Australia on the 1st of January. Yeah.
Jesus Christ, that's what a story. I mean, when you came back, I mean, what was your attitude to life? I mean, you're walking around, you're going around Australia. No one really understands what you've been through. Like they say they do, but they really don't. So, do you feel angry with them? Did you feel?
No, not really. No, really. It's obviously in hospital. We got the best treatment was here in Melbourne, the Epworth Hospital in Richmond. So I had 2 great doctors, Professor Martin Richardson, who's in the Navy himself, and I believe that after he assisted me with orthopaedics, a couple of years later he actually went over Afghanistan himself, and he's also done a lot in Papua New Guinea and third world countries, training up those people. So it's just people who, just really good people, just people who should be proud that are in our community that go out of their way. It was 1st of January, that was his New Year's, and he left his family lunch or dinner or whatever it was to come and help me. So I can only be helpful for that, and same as Dr. Nigel Mann, they were fantastic. So they really got me up to a stage, because I'll tell you now, when the first couple of months where you're not sure if you're going to walk again, I had no intentions of being in a wheelchair, I can assure you. So it was, I had a very clear suicide plan that if I didn't get back walking, this is how, I've got a couple of months left, I'm done. So it's a transition that some people can make, some people can't.
How long were you in hospital in Australia for?
4 months. 4 months we learned how to walk. So I had a staph, which is a type of strain that's not in Australia. So it's funny, we talk about pandemics now. Whenever something new comes to Australia, that's how they treat it, like a pandemic. So I had a disease that wasn't in Australia, and Australia didn't want to have in its hospital system. So I was bubble boy for about a month before they could even, go anywhere to learn how to walk. So it was just every day, just everyone's coming with gowns, just cleaning the wounds before I can actually get on a surgery table. So that wasn't the best. But then, every day you just do little things. You started getting in the pool, starting to get active again, and then you start the process of learning how to walk, and it's painful because you've got everyone, we're all born with feet, and then imagine if you're 30 years of age, you've built up Achilles and all this strength in your bones, they're weight bearing, and then all of a sudden you've got a shin, which is not weight bearing, and then that's your impact. So
would have been painful all the time.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you've got to get used to that. Your stomach's got to be able to settle. And luckily for me, I had some really good doctors who made a nice and clean cut that allows me to walk well today.
So after 4 months, you came out,
Yeah.
and how long was it before you started working?
Straight away, straight back to my unit. So I think I was a part of a unit that probably didn't have a lot of...
Back to the unit in the army?
Yeah, straight back to unit.
So
Yeah.
what did you do there?
So we went back just into in a training capacity, really.
Yep.
so
Here in
it's funny.
Australia?
Yeah, it was funny. 6 weeks after I got out of hospital, I still had open wounds. They wanted me to go outfield because they were short of soldiers. My wife went apeshit. I didn't go. I was pretty happy. I was like, oh, it's my job. This is what I've got to go do. But she wasn't over happy with that, so I didn't go. But yeah, went back there for a year and just had, sorry, coughing. Just had some constant problems up there at Darwin that we couldn't resolve, and then unfortunately I had to have a second amputation, so I came back to Melbourne and stayed in Melbourne. So and I was then, I think I was put in to a transition. I think my unit really didn't know what to do, so they put me into a unit which was basically a discharge unit. You go there when you've got, if you've got, for example, you've been there for 15 years and you've got 6 months long service leave, and then you discharge, you've only got 3 months, they'll put you in that unit. So that's where my unit chucked me in then.
Did you say second amputation?
Yeah, that's correct, yeah.
What happened with that?
Yeah, just got some infections that were in there, and basically because it blew the foot off and the Achilles, it was a long stump. So I don't know if you can see it on the camera here, but it doesn't allow for enough to have mechanics behind it. So you can imagine when I'm down here, that's how deep my stump goes. It doesn't allow for this hydraulics. So unfortunately, I was just literally just had nothing, no spring, nothing back. So I wasn't walking well, always in a lot of pain. So the determination was to have a second amputation and get some life quality back.
So just one last point of this, because I know we're on the first floor of the Fitz, best cafe and bar in Fitzroy, but we're on the first floor, and you just bolted up those stairs. I mean, you seem to be, like, to an average person walking down the street looking at you, they wouldn't say, oh, that person's missing a
it just looks like I've just pulled a hamstring or something like that and a foot in a footy. I don't play footy, you can see how fat I am, but definitely I think it helps when you're in your supreme fitness level. When you're in Afghanistan, you get 60 kilos on your back and you're climbing massive mountains we don't have in Australia, in heat, in
altitude,
extreme conditions and altitude. And then all of a sudden you come back and then really got, I had a choice, either die or walk. So I fucking wanted to walk. So you worked hard during the rehab to try and give yourself an opportunity for life. Yeah, so and that obviously goes a long way to now, even though it's been 10 years, then the hard work I put into rehab to learn how to walk has kept me well.
Laurence, when you did 8 months, you came back to Australia. How hard was it adjusting? I mean, how did you feel when you got off the plane? Did you just fit back into, Australian life the way you had prior to going to Afghanistan, or?
I think I had it pretty easy, in comparison. I think, got back and went on leave, and then went back to work. I think I had 4 weeks leave, and went back to work to back at Adelaide. So it was sort of good to come back and all that sort of stuff. It's a bit of a you've got a lot of spare time that you didn't have before, and you go straight on leave, really. I think when I came back, I think you do like a decompression, they call it. So you go to Al Minhad, which I think is like 4 days, 5 days, spend some time there, and then you fly back to Australia, and then I think you spend 2 or 3 days, I can't really remember, 2 or 3 days, and you have all these debriefs about coming back to Australia. I can't even really remember them. And then you go on leave. You go back to your family and stuff like that.
But 99% of Australians wouldn't be able to jerry about what you've been through.
I think...
And Brendan's been through especially.
Yeah.
Ironically, probably Muslim Melburnians, Adam Brody, would probably know more about what you guys went through than people say around this area.
Yeah.
Was that hard to... let me ask you another question linked to that. When you hear fireworks on New Year's Eve, does that trigger you?
Not me, no.
Yeah.
No. I think, one thing, I guess, I was, you're a professional soldier, if that makes sense. So I think it was harder to transition out of the army because I was doing a job that I wanted to do. I was on leave. I'd just done something that I trained for, that I wanted to do in that sense. I think the worst thing, it was harder for, when I came back, the girl I was with at the time, I don't think I was with her at the time. I thought I was, but I wasn't. We parted ways, and that was a hell of a lot harder than anything, and that would have happened anyway because I was a bit of a prick. But yeah.
The Australian troops come back from Iraq, Afghanistan, Timor, wherever it might be. Post-traumatic stress syndrome. You've got 500 Australian troops have killed themselves. Yep. Vets have killed themselves since 2001. It's a huge. It's two a month basically at the moment. The British Army is twice the size of the Australian Army, and they've only had 300 suicides in the same period. So it's a huge issue, and under a lot of pressure. Obviously, the Royal Commission has been established in April of this year. So why do you think, what drives troops, vets, to suicide?
Well, there's multiple, and I think that's why the Royal Commission's required. If there was a simple science to it, we'd fix it. Yeah. We're fighters. We'd fight for the information, and that's what we're doing with the Royal Commission. We're fighting the information while they're doing it.
Well, give us a few of those reasons, like in your opinion.
Yeah, obviously there's a couple of key ones. One is a lot of people have sustained injuries in the Defence Force, and those injuries are hard. So you've got people who, especially in infantry or combat corps, what they are is they're labourers, and then all of a sudden they're 30 years of age and their body's failing them. They can't get a labourer job in the civilian world, so they're left lost. They're in a transition period where they probably haven't got the financial backing to go back and do any other education. They're too proud to go back into share accommodation, and they get themselves in some really bad financial situations because they can't earn the income that they needed to do it. So if some people don't want to also live with the injuries they've got, I know the last bloke last mate that I served with that killed himself, that was the end of it. So Craig obviously considered that the best part of his life was over. He wasn't going to be able to continue with sports and the way that he lived his life, and he assumed that the thing that he had to do to make himself happy, or all these new skill sets that he'd have to obtain in life to be happy, he wasn't prepared to climb it. So it's tough. So unfortunately, I'm probably at the stage where that many people we know have committed suicide. I'm at the stage where I probably think that you cope with it by saying that it was their choice. It's a shit thing to say, and you say that to someone, the civilian, when they talk about military, and they're shocked by it. And they go, must be something wrong. What can we do to stop it? And there's a lot of things. And I think the ADF needs to have a really good look at itself as well. So there's a lot of things wrong with the ADF that creates a problem. So I think a lot of people get back there and they give DVA or any of the counselling services some bad raps. But at the end of the day, there's people that help them after they got out of Defence Force. If you didn't need help, then they wouldn't be seeking it. So those organisations wouldn't be required. So the problem is, I think a lot of it is in the ADF.
We've also got, we spoke about earlier basic training, about 80 days of training you how to be a soldier. But when you discharge, you've got a 3-day transition seminar and then you're back on leave. So there's this massive disparity there, and regardless of if you're discharging for medical reasons or you're discharging voluntarily, oftentimes a lot of the things that you don't consider within that discharge process, within that transition, are the things that are most important to you in that job role. It's that self-worth, that purpose, that sense of you're part of something that's much bigger than yourself, and that you know that you're with a whole bunch of dudes that you're all on the same page. You've all got, you might have different experiences growing up, but you've all got similar experiences now. And then you leave, and you you get back, and then there's a lot of isolation, and there's a lot of I remember, the idea of a job interview at first was really challenging for me, because it's in the military you don't have really job interviews. It's you've got all of your PARs and your fitness assessments. You've got all of this sort of stuff, and yep, sweet, you can do that course, or you can't. So there's a massive cultural gap, an absolutely massive cultural gap, and that lack of that lack of, I guess, the ability to have that goal orientation. In the army, everything is structured in such a way that it's quite easy to set a goal. You know what to do to achieve that goal, whether it's a course or a selection program or whatever. There's gateways that you know how to cross them. But you get out into civilian world, and even first year university, no one's telling you or helping you or mentoring you or anything like that. And diggers aren't dumb people, but if you're in an environment for 5, 10, 15 years and then you come out of that environment, it can be a really confusing place, and it doesn't take all that many failures at times to feel like a failure. So what we need to do is sort of focus more on that understanding, that cultural understanding. The British have got a much greater idea of what their military is to them. Same with the US. The US, like a lot of guys,
they got a different business model as well. So I think one of the good things that the British do well, especially with leadership, is to keep them relevant. So in the Australia Defence Force, you have quite often people who have spent 30, 35 years in Defence Force. They've got no relevance left. They've got no leadership. They've got no skills that can be able to pass on to the next generation. The British moves them on. You have a certain amount of years in the Defence Force to get your career, and then say your time's up. But because they know your time's up, they start that transition period and they do it really well. They thank people for their serious. So what happens there, you have a continuous change in hierarchy and promotion. So what that does, we always talk about people getting out of the Defence Force with mental health. Mental health doesn't exist in the fucking army. So if you've got log chams in the chain of command and the leadership is poor, what you've got is a disciplined culture. So me and you work in construction, for example. Imagine if one bloke's 5 minutes late on a construction site and the supervisor goes up there and says, "You're not going home this weekend, you're not seeing your kids, you're not seeing your family, you're not getting it paid." Your team's going to get knocked out and you're probably going to get a picture of your dog. The Defence Force, that's normal. So there's a culture where there's no fucking leadership in regards to, they train you during a training course, but in regards to positive thinking, positive reinforcement, that doesn't exist. It's you will do this or this is the consequence. So when you build that culture where everything is fear, 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 eventually people's anxiety is going to get to a certain point where they go, fuck the ADF, and they're not really happy people when they get out. They're broken because they joined the Australian Defence Force with good intentions. They wanted to serve this nation. They wanted integrity, mateship and teamwork. And too many units in the Australian Defence Force, it doesn't exist. You've got a disciplined culture because the leaders aren't relevant to the 20th century. They're stuck doing things that they did in the 1940s, disciplined from the 1940s mentality, and it's just not working. And there's people in the Australian Defence Force that need to have a good look at themselves. And one of them is the CDF. So I had a run-in with him 2 years ago.
What's the CDF?
The Chief of Defence Force. So I caught up with Campbell a couple of years ago. I was in a veteran deployment in Canberra, and I asked him pretty squarely how many people who have lost their lives, how many widows, mothers, amputees or quadriplegics, that people under your command, do you keep up with? And his answer was none. And it just shows his mentality, where he gets on TV and he talks about things that should be better, he talks about leadership. At the end of the day, leadership starts at him, and I don't think it goes too far.
So so before you leave, the ADF's got to lift their game.
Well, yeah,
That's
it's got
the
to
point.
within the organisation. Yeah? I hope the part of this Royal Commission actually sees that in regards to there's no positive thinking. You make a mistake in the army, everyone hates you for it. Your section hates it because the section gets punished for it. So it's a punishment mentality, and it's an unusual business model. What can happen is, when we talk about the British, the transition where they go through a certain amount of years and keep their chain of command inspired and relevant, in the Australian Defence Force, you can have people who, they've done their bit, but they're old majors now. They're not capable of being leaders anymore, but they've got a rank that says they're a leader and they demand leadership, even though they can't perform it. And their job is, might be to do logistics on the slouch hat. Nothing to do with war, completely irrelevant. But the ADF will pay that person $130,000 and give him a major's house. The corporal, which is on ground, leading his men into battle where they could lose their life or limbs, is on $65,000 and gets half the entitlements of the general. So imagine doing that in civilian world. It's a completely different business model. The bloke that's doing fuck all and the bloke that's busting his chops, massive pay gap difference. And this person here is stopping the transition that this person gets for his career progression. So it just doesn't work. So the ADF really needs to have a look at how it structures its hierarchy and actually start getting positive thinking in regards to soldiers, because the discipline is not relevant to how kids in this society are raised. Now, I grew up in a military family, so discipline was, Pop was always kids is to be seen, not to be heard. That was his mentality. And me and Pop, we had a great relationship. You know, I knew exactly where my boundaries were. If I pissed him off, you clocked one over the head. If you didn't do it, you know, you got a lolly. So that's just the way the life went. But you know, a lot of people don't grow up in that society. So when they get into Defence Force, they want teamwork. You know, some people would join the Defence Force because they want a sense of adventure. They want to make new friends. They want to start their life. And then all of a sudden they get in there and they've just got people yelling more time. You know, they're 2 minutes late. You're not getting paid this weekend. Or, nah, you're on guard duty, the weekend's gone. You know, it's discipline for the purpose of discipline because they can't lead men. There's just too many people in there in that Defence Force and the model that leadership is poor.
Are you going to present to the Royal Commission? Are you going to say some of that stuff?
If I'm after.
Yeah. And when soldiers get out, I mean, how do you rate the Department of Veteran Affairs? They get $13 billion of taxpayers' money every year. And also, what do you think of the RSL? I mean, I suppose to an outsider, they'd be like the union for soldiers. Like I'm a CFMU member and I've got a union that sort of looks after us. You get good pay and good conditions, but I wonder if the RSL, they spend a lot of time on the, looking after the pokey operations, are you happy with their performance? And also, as I say, Department of Veteran Affairs, what do you think of their performance looking after soldiers that have come out of the army?
Yeah, I think the RSL needs to pick its game up when it comes to advocating for veterans, when it comes to advocating like what Brendan's talking about. The RSL should be saying that. They should be knocking on their doors. You know, the RSL should be knocking on. It should be two-way street. They should be looking inwards and they should be looking outwards. You should be able to walk into any RSL in the country and say, I've just gotten out of defence and I want to be a tradie or I want to be a lawyer, and they say, all right, cool, we've got these pathways for each.
And they've hooked up with employers that could,
That'd be great. Yeah. That'd be great. There are some sub-branches that do that, without a doubt, but it needs to start higher. You've got a lot of really well-intentioned, really good-intentioned people within the RSL, but they, once again, are lacking leadership from higher. So if we get that right,
they were great for me at the start, the RSL, and they actually just full stop. They've been good to me. It's just that sometimes we, now that I'm getting involved for the Hawthorn RSL, you start to see some financial outcomes of the RSL, and it's not that you want to have a go with the people that's in charge of it, the board there, but you just hope that they can start listening to the generations coming through and just say that, pokies, one, they're a bad thing for society, and two, they're not making you money. So you need to get out of that business model, work with stakeholders such as the government and work out an exit strategy, and also a manner that you can get some remuneration to look after soldiers. They still need that remuneration level, but get it in a way that's, one, sustainable, and two, is not detrimental to society.
Yeah. You're both in Hawthorn RSL and they don't have pokies.
No.
So how do they survive financially?
Yes, we sell poppies. Sell Anzac badges. That's how we operate, and we obviously, we've branched out. We've got vending machines on construction sites, which is great from the companies, West Gate Tunnel, Mordialloc Bypass, thanks to those projects for accepting us on there. And then from there, it's not big money, but what it is, every single dollar of it that we make out of it goes straight to veterans. There's no big administration, there's no via Tabcorp, there's no one else gets their fingers on that dollar. It's a dollar that goes into account, it's a dollar that goes to a veteran, and it's administered by volunteers. So I think that's the best part about it. So I'm the treasurer, so we got about 70 or 80,000 of income over last year, and if you look at the financial statements of pokies, venues out there, they're in the millions of losses. So they couldn't operate, they still had to pay for licences, they've lost millions. We've got a very basic model, and we're probably the best performing state branch out there. It's scary.
And that's utilising the membership. That treasurer is Brendan's the treasurer. He didn't fall into that position. That was you're a veteran, you're an accountant, you've got the skill set. So let's use it. Let's use the community that we've got to build the community that we've got as well. So.
Yeah, we've got some good things. Veteran construction obviously works out of us. We've got a lot of guys on construction sites, probably about 25 guys into work. And whenever some guys comes to us and he's struggling for work, we've got 180 defence members. We try and network and get that bloke a job, and then that's what the RSL is supposed to do. What we want to advocate is that if a veteran goes in there, and especially if they're looking for help, you don't want to. And it's not the person who's at the front option. It's not their fault ever. They're a civilian employee. They're a receptionist. They're working quite often for the pokey venue. They're looking at tab licences and stuff like that. Please sign in here. And then you're trying to find a veteran. You find there's none there. All you've got is these ding, 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 ding. There's no veteran spaces in there, and there's no assistance. And they just walk away. And it's one thing that Lucas Moon always says is veterans that joins the RSLs don't kill themselves. So for every fucking bloke that gets pushed away from an RSL because it's not welcoming, because it's not what they expect, it's not what they heard about from their grandparents and parents who served at the RSL that they were a part of, it's a veteran that could potentially kill themselves. To give you an idea, so it's not a suicide event, but my pop passed away 2 years ago. He was a member of the Geelong RSL for something like 30 odd years. So he didn't go there very often, frequent there, but he went there the Vietnam vet days. He paid his due days. He was a financial member. So I rang up the RSL seeking to have his funeral, his wake, at the back of the Geelong RSL. They told us I had to come in, fill out a form, and then pay $360, and I'll be put on a waiting list. I didn't fill out that fucking form. I ain't going in there. I went to a pub around the corner after Dad's funeral. So that's the welcoming of the RSL, that you have to you'll be a member for 32 years, you pay your dues, and then all of a sudden you have to go on a waiting list to use a shitty little room at the back of a bowls club, which has got, let's be honest, some of these RSLs now have $6 plaques posted on the wall. They're fucking disgusting. We don't know where the memorabilia is, but they obviously lost the direction where they were going looking after veterans. And I reckon if you had the wake in there, you'd probably feel bad because you're running around, there's pokies going in the background, there's people swearing and carrying on, and you've got a dirty old cafe over there, and then you're at a bowls club. So where the fuck does that resonate with an RSL? It would be, probably wouldn't have been proud to be fucking at his wake in there. So we had it in a pub. You know, and the RSL was just going to lift this game.
We can get back to it though.
You talked about Lucas Moon. He's like the head of a reform movement within the RSL in Victoria. Is that? I mean, that's.
Well, yeah, I don't know if he's part of a reform group, but he's pushing for change. So I think 2 years ago, before Lucas started being involved with the RSL, he's done a great amount of work, especially from a volunteer. At the end of the day, he's gotten people thinking about different business models. We've got people critiquing financials that never have. RSL have had 30 years where no one has dared go back and say, RSL, what the fuck are you doing? And all of a sudden they've got a bloke there, and not only he's got some good politicians following him and following his way. He wants to run, not run, but how he wants to be able to change the RSL and the current focus, which is one-dimensional. And he's done so from a bloke that's got a full-time job, he's got three kids himself, and in his spare time he's advocating for a Royal Commission and trying to change the RSL. So he's getting a bit of pushback. So it's not a reform group, but he's definitely getting pushback from the members within Anzac House on a personal level that don't want to engage with him, I don't believe, or he doesn't want to engage with them, one of the two. But there is definitely a change that it needs to occur. I don't know exactly which business model to go, but I'd love to see the actual financials and get hold of it and say, right, where can we take this organisation? Because in the last, let's be honest, since Ruxton's gone, you look at clubs like the RSAV club, they've got resorts out there, they've got massive golf clubs, they've expanded. Where has RSL Victoria gone for 20 years? I'll tell you where it's gone backwards. It's sold assets that were left for us from World War I and World War II diggers. It's in a terrible financial situation at the moment, and it's going nowhere. It's like it's earning millions every year, and it's selling clubs, and because the land is worth so much in inner city Melbourne, to pay for losses of pokies. It is going nowhere. It's just going round and round and round, but it's constricting itself. It is absolutely going nowhere. And if you're going nowhere financially, I don't care who you are, you're not going to be able to advocate the appropriate level that's required for current veterans.
I suppose if vets are killing themselves at one every fortnight, there's something wrong with the RSL and the culture within the Army, and that hopefully the Royal Commission churns this up and creates some change.
Yeah, it's great.
Laurence, if you were able to talk to yourself the day before you signed up for the Army back in the day, what would you say to yourself? Would you still do it? Would you have done anything different? What would you say to some kid your age from Swinburne Uni who's thinking of joining the Army? I mean, after the experiences that you've been through.
100%. I'd do it again. 100%. I think the only differences I would make would be probably just better planning on some of those bigger transition points of my life. Probably review those a little bit more. Use the skill sets that I used on a daily basis and use them for my life. I would have thought that. That's probably what I'd do. Yeah, because I think for me personally, I think the army provided me with a great amount of skill, and gave me a good perception. Came with its bad, but you got to weigh that up with it, with the good as well. But planning, preparation.
Brendan, you've sacrificed a lot. I mean, what would you say to a kid who's thinking of joining the army today? Would you encourage it, notwithstanding all the cultural issues you've raised about the army? And
I'd ask the question. I think quite often the recruitment, they're a civilian organisation nowadays that recruits in the Defence Force. Their job is to get kids into the army, promote them. So you actually got to reach out and find out what the kid wants to do in life. What's his background? What's his mentality, situation, right? So you can direct him in the right course. I wouldn't direct anyone to go to artillery. My time again, just like stay well away. But there are some good career paths for kids out there, but they've got to make sure that they think about what they're going to do when they get out. Yeah. So if you're 21 years of age and all you want to do is go and be an infantry soldier, realise when you get to 30, putting 60 kilos on your back ain't going to be fun. Humping up hills is not going to be fun. It's a young man's game. Just make sure that when you go into the Defence Force, you know what you're going to get out of it, and then work out what you're going to be doing when your time's up. Because if you don't plan it, you'll be stuck. And even if some of the people do plan, I planned it well. I thought I still had the Bachelor of Commerce. I did a couple of other small courses, and when I got out of the Defence Force, I applied for maybe 600-700 jobs. I was unemployed for 7 months. I just couldn't get a look in. Whether it's some people just automatically presume because you've got a physical injury, you've got a mental illness, and then wouldn't give me an opportunity. But even myself, I was 34, half decent head on me. It was in the brain, not the looks. But definitely, it was tough. So you got to be able to plan that. There's no lack of planning can go into it in regards to what you're going to do when you get out. We're not the US. Obviously, I was part of Invictus Games, and I've done some paraskeleton stuff around the world. When you're in those environments, the US have days where employees come onto the base. They'll have the police force, ambulance, fire brigade. They all come to the base and they recruit. They say, if you want to join, here's the fucking
That doesn't happen here.
Come here. You come to the Australian Defence Force. They're so keen on keeping people because good people get out because of the lack of leadership I talked about before. If you're a good bloke and you're half switched on, you've got a cranky old sergeant that's an absolute dipshit. You're not going to stick around for 3 or 4 years. You're going to get to the next stage of your life. That guy's in my way. I'm out. And then from there, the ADF doesn't want to leave them. So they're not going to bring in employees or employment programs to take away the good soldiers. And that's the way the ADF thinks. It thinks about more retaining soldiers and preparing for the next stage of life.
Yeah. And that's what it should, the best form of recruitment is being able to walk into an RSL and see a bunch of veterans there who have got successful post-service careers. Yeah. If I walked in and I saw that, I'd go, yeah.
Rather than just ping-pinging of the pokey machines.
Best form of recruitment, I could say.
Yeah.
The Army should be doing it.
Well, it's just been fascinating meeting you two, and I just think that your story is, especially, what you've been through, it's really inspirational, and hopefully anyone out there who's a vet who's feeling a bit shit about themselves at the moment is listening to you two tonight. Hopefully it'll lift their spirits and they'll hook up, if nothing else, then with the Hawthorn RSL, because I know that you guys down there are doing amazing work.
Yeah.
And
we're on social media and all the good stuff.
Yeah. So if somebody out there wants to hook up with and talk to.
Yeah, it's great. The Hawthorn RSL, we've got 2 advocates. Any blokes out there have a lot of injuries, and we always say to blokes, you put the paperwork in sooner you get out of the Defence Force, because you're out for 20 years. It's going to be hard to pin that injuries you've sustained in the Army back on the Army. DVA is a system. They do some really good work, the DVA. They've got a tough system they need to be able to administer. But if you're 55 and you've carried something for 20 years, when that really hits you when you're in the 50s, the odds are the ADF has got to, DVA has got to look at it and go, what have you done for the last 20 years that could have aggravated or caused that injury? Because we don't want to pay it out. We've got 13 billion, but a lot of it's exhausted already under current care. So that's the system. So we always say, get that sorted, get that side of your life out of the way. We'll do that for you. It can be a minefield out there. We've got free advocates. We've got about 5 welfare people, yourself being
We'll put the link up at the end of the show as well.
Yeah, it's great. Have a look at Hawthorn RSL, jump up there, and if you need to, jump on there. It just looks like a very basic inquiry. Send it. Press on the button, write down. Yeah. You might be just wanting to catch up with some veterans you haven't for a long time. Yeah. Say g'day. We're friends with the Veteran Motorcycle Club. If you're out there, you like for a ride, you might want to join that aspect of it. There's other RSLs that we could meet you. There's some really good RSLs out there that if Hawthorn's too far away, we say, hey, go to these guys. These are good guys.
Yeah.
And we might even give them a call and they'll give you a buzz. So it's just all touch and base. That's all it is.
I really hope the Royal Commission gets you everything that you just want because you deserve it. And good luck over the next few weeks and months.
Thanks.
Brendan, Laurence, Quinn, thanks for coming on the show,
Cheers.
man.
Thanks, mate.
Cheers. Thank you.
Thank you.
Cheers. Thank you.